that day I live in a dream. I live in a dream.
Welcome to Only Trying to Help, the podcast where we try to help you be helpful to other people. My name is Kate Watson, and I'm joined by one of my favorite humans, Mats. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and then I'll tell the world why you're one of my favorite humans from my perspective. But I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kate. And as you know, the feeling is highly mutual. We've had many exchanges praising each other. So, my name is Mats Hogmark, and I'm from Sweden, and I work as a physician. I'm specialized in general practice, family medicine, and I work in a primary healthcare center in the countryside where I see patients on a daily basis and taking care of more or less everything from the physical to the psychological, and men, women, children, elderly people, and all of that. So that's my profession. And like you yourself, I'm also a trainer. So I try to teach others how to be more helpful to their clients and to their patients. So that is part of my profession. And on a more private level, I have two daughters, one who is 18 years old, but now in France as an exchange student for a year. So it's a bit sad. This is the first week without her. She'll be gone for a year. And then I have a 13-year-old as well, the two daughters. So, and they live with me every other week. And then the other week they're with their mom. Mm-hmm. And apart from that, in my free time, if there is such a thing as free time, I'm also involved in the political work. I am a member of the liberal Green party called the Center Party here in Sweden, and I'm engaged in mainly now looking to work with the regional politics, which deals mostly with healthcare issues. So we have an election coming up in a couple of weeks. So hopefully some people will like me and will put a mark in front of my name on the board. So we'll see.
Well, let me help with that, because we do have a little following in Sweden. So maybe if I say some kind things about you, we can get a couple more votes. I want to tell the world that Mats is funny. Mats is obviously kind. I mean, given the work that you do, I'm sure most people would assume that about you. You are someone who is so dedicated to your values. And what you did not mention is that you are an excellent dancer, my friend.
Well, thank you.
We need more people like you in this world. And I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for a long time, because you are a professional helper. That it's not an accident when you're helpful to people, that you're really taking the time to consider how to show up for folks who you care about. And I was saying to you, you're not only a doctor who sees patients one-on-one, but you are really active in government. And so I think of you as someone who's helpful at a community level. And I guess I was just thinking, like, maybe you could talk about that a little bit, like some of the differences between helping people one-on-one versus trying to make an impact in a larger way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting question, actually, because in my work as a physician, there is mainly working one-on-one, me and the patient, or perhaps me, the patient, and a family member. So there's small groups of people that I work with in every single meeting. But as a trainer, for instance, like yourself, as a trainer, we meet with groups of healthcare professionals, for instance, maybe 20 people or so. You meet with that group, trying to make them become better at their one-on-one meetings. So that is something that I like, because you can feel that maybe that has a larger impact for more patients. If I can make 20 healthcare professionals become better at listening to their patients and communicating with their patients, and that might have a big impact on hundreds of individual meetings. And I like that thought.
Yeah, of course.
And then, I mean, getting involved in organizations. I mean, you and I have been organizing international conferences together. That is also actually, I think, apart from it was really fun to do it together, it's also a way of trying to help people. I mean, downstream, you organize a conference for 350 people. They come and they interact, they learn new things, they go back to their respective cities and countries and sort of spread the word about the news that they've received. So that is also a way of helping on a larger scale, I think, through organizational work.
I'd never thought of it that way before, and now you've got me imagining visually like a ladder of sorts, where, like, you know, and you can see me using my hands. The listeners will not be able to see this, but I'm kind of motioning toward the bottom rung of the ladder, the bottom step. And that may be helping one person at a time. A person you see in your community falls down, you help them up, something like that. And then the next step up is helping people who may help that person, and then training the people who may become trainers someday. And you know, the ladder goes up and up and up, and all the different ways that our help kind of, you know, I think you even said moves downstream. Did you say that, or did I think of it?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great thought that there are ways that we could help the world that then spread. And it's a positive spread. You know, after 2 years of a pandemic, we're so concerned about things being contagious. This is the kind of thing that you want to be contagious.
Yeah, no vaccines against this.
No,
that's right.
The thing you may give a little less time to may even be having the same or even a larger impact than some things that we give a lot of time to. And I might ask the listeners to think about that in their own lives. You know, there maybe there's a person in your life who you feel you give a lot of time to try to help this person. And that's wonderful. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. And maybe you spend a little less time in your lives doing things that actually have a great impact. And so to think about the reach of the help that you provide the world may be an interesting thought exercise for a lot of people.
I'm thinking about this podcast that you've been making now for, 7 seasons? I think I've listened to every episode. I know I've listened to every episode.
You are officially the biggest fan that we have.
I'm a fan. Yeah. No, but I mean, a thing like this, a podcast like this, I mean, you don't have millions of listeners, but you have a number of listeners, and people that keep coming back, listening every week. And if 10 people every week get some really new like insights from listening to this, you have changed these 10 people, and maybe they will go tell somebody else about what they've learned. And I mean, so that I mean, I know this takes some time for you, but this is not what you do what you spend most of your professional life with. So this is a side thing for you, but it has a big impact. So it was a good thing that you said. So because I mean, the vast majority of my time, I see patients one-on-one, and each of those meetings are important. I mean, sometimes I do a lot of good, sometimes perhaps I don't. I mean, and that's just the way it is. But if I take 4 hours off and deliver a training to 10 or 15 or 20 people, then that's not a lot of time, but it could actually be quite beneficial for many people.
Yeah. You know, I'm also thinking about how people who listen to this podcast might relate to this that we're talking about, even if they're not trainers, even if they're not involved in government. But how could they connect to this? And I know that some of the people who are drawn to the podcast are parents or friends or spouses who are worried about someone, and they listen to the podcast because they're thinking, I'm just really trying to help my 15-year-old son, or they listen to the podcast because they're really trying to help their best friend who's struggling. And I would encourage everyone who's tuning in with like a person in mind who you really want to help to think about the groups that person belongs to and how you might have an impact there. So just an example that I'm thinking of. Let's say you're a parent and you're really worried about your 15-year-old son who's struggling. Maybe he seems lonely or isolated, something like that. Yes, you could invest a great amount of time trying to sit down with your son and say, can I help you? I would like to help you. I want to be there for you. Or could maybe the family be a group? And as a family, the whole family decides we want to make some changes in our lives. We want to do things differently. And is there a way to just work with the group of a family in a way that kind of lifts everybody up rather than, further isolating the person who you think needs help by saying, you're the one I need to help? I wonder if there are ways to support people in groups that maybe we all miss out on from time to time.
Yeah. Could you even, with that example of the 15-year-old son, could you even involve his friends in that group to make them part of trying to see how can we be better with each other? How can we help
of course.
each other?
Yeah. Why not? That seems like a missed opportunity if we invest so much time on sitting him down on his bed and saying, we need to talk, when maybe there's a group approach that could be impactful.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, when you brought up that example, I could feel as a parent myself to two teenagers now that it's very easy to jump on that problem and see, well, I need to do something about it. We need to do something about it, and then sit down with that 15-year-old, and then I'm thinking about something that you've been talking on the podcast before, and that you and I also talk about in our trainings, that we call it the writing reflex, the need that you feel the need to fix somebody, and trying to sort of sit on your hands and just, well, don't jump on it, and because maybe that's not what your 15-year-old wants to talk about at this very moment. And holding back that writing reflex is a good thing in most parts, but it's a difficult thing to do when you are very much involved yourself. I mean, if it's your own child, or if it's your spouse or your parent or something, it's more difficult to stay I mean, detached from the problem, because you are also part of, you're so emotionally engaged in it.
Yeah, you're invested.
Very much so. And for instance, in my line of profession, of course, I care a lot about my patients, but if they don't want to do what I think they should do, at the end of the day, it's actually not my problem.
Correct.
It sounds harsh, but it's not going to affect my personal life. I will think, oh, it's too bad that they didn't do what I suggested them to do, but it's actually up to them. So it's easier to stay cool in those moments.
Ooh. Oh, I like that you're calling it staying cool, because I think very often we use words like boundaried, but I think that's one of those terms that not a lot of people really understand. And so I'm always searching for a better word. I like stay cool. Stay cool. And you're right. When we say things like, well, it's not really my problem, it might sound a little harsh, but there's something so healthy about it, because when you're able to stay cool we become less attacking on people. We actually can help them better when we remember that their health is their health and my body is my body and their problems are their problems and mine are my own. That we're actually just in a better place to be helpful if we can do that. It might initially feel harsh or even sound harsh, but the outcome tends to be a much better one.
Mm. And in a professional role, for me, I mean, I have some specific tools that I try to use with my patients in order to try to understand them better. So what I literally do in almost every one-on-one meeting with my patients, one of the things that I do is that I actually ask them, so what are your expectations for me in this consultation, or I ask them, so what do you hope to get out of this meeting? And or sometimes I even say, so how can I be of help to you? Or how do you think that I could be helpful to you? Or something along those lines. And that is a very good thing to ask people. Sometimes they get a little bit perplexed and like they say, well, you should know because you're the doctor. But and so then I'll have to back and try to rephrase that. But in something along those lines, it's good to ask, because some people, they just want to, they say, well, I just want to know that it's not something bad or dangerous. And other people, they say, I want prescriptions for this medication, or I want an X-ray, or, so, I mean, it's good for me to know. And then I can help them with what they need to help with, or not help them with that, because maybe it's not the right thing for them. But I know what expectations that they have. And if they say, I need an X-ray, or if they don't say that I want an X-ray, maybe I don't even have to talk about the X-ray, because I don't think they need one, and they're not asking for it. So that is a very good tool. And this has been a long way of saying that it's more difficult to do that in private relationships.
Yes.
I sometimes wish you did that more, asking that 15-year-old, so how can I be helpful to you, my son?
Yeah.
But maybe you don't do that because you're not as cool in those conversations.
Because you listen to the podcast, I always try to give it a name. And I'm so tempted to name this episode Be Cool. Be cool. But I probably won't, because I think there's a much bigger meaning to this conversation than just that. I really think we're talking about impact. Small, medium, large, whatever the size, but there are different ways to make an impact.
Sorry, may I just say, be cool is different from be cold.
Well,
isn't it?
Now I'm even more tempted to call it.
Yeah, because I mean, if you because you don't want to come across as cold or flat or not interested or not engaged. Because you're not. I'm not. I am all of those things. I want to know more. I want to help, but I also need to sort of make sure that I stay on the right level in relationship to my patient. So to be cool, but not to be cold.
Yeah, I'm trying to sort out the temperature metaphor here, because it's actually very confusing the way we say cool. Because there's really nothing temperature cool about being cool. It's actually a very warm way to interact with someone, because it's very engaging to be so calm and relaxed. But we call it cool. So whatever that means.
Yeah, maybe calm is a good way, like you just said. So cool, calm. Yeah.
But the other word we use, which is so funny, is chill. I don't know. Language is very strange. But cool and chill are words I would use to describe what we're talking about. And yet when you are cool and chill, you can often be very emotionally warm. So it's confusing.
There is this movement in healthcare in some places that to instead of asking people what's the matter with you, instead you ask them what matters to you. because then you know what is important to you in life. And if somebody says, well, it's really important for me to be able to go out running, and they present with a knee that is really, they are hurting in their knee, then you understand that, well, if your knee is hurting, then maybe you can't do the thing that matters to you, which is running. So then I know that probably I need to try to help them with that bad knee.
Yeah.
And you can have a patient that is a smoker, and if you ask them what matters to you, and they will say, well, my grandchildren matter to me a lot. I want to see them graduate from high school, and so that could be a way in trying to talk about maybe to quit smoking and things like that. So instead of asking what's wrong with you, then ask what is important for you in life.
I am aware that is a shift in healthcare in Europe. It's not really catching on here in the United States, but that's outside my control. But what I wonder is if there's an opportunity to try that same approach with that 15-year-old in your home who's struggling, rather than, what's the matter with you? Why do you play video games all day long? What's wrong with you? We might ask, what matters to you? What feels important? And you might discover that what matters is this 15-year-old wants to feel safe, and outside the home where there are bullies and gangs and drugs, it doesn't feel safe. What matters to me is feeling safe, so I sit in my room and play video games.
Yeah.
That's really different than just coming in and saying, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you out with your friends right now?
When you said that now, I for a little while, I was that 15-year-old, and I felt when you said that, what's wrong with you? I immediately felt, I don't want to talk to her.
Yeah.
And then when you shifted and you said, so what matters to you? Then I immediately felt, wow, this is a conversation I could actually have with you. So it does matter how we formulate. Words are important, and the way we present them is very important.
You know what? I'm going to try to bring this full circle here, but you also are involved in your community, trying to make change to society. And Mats, I won't pretend to understand politics in Sweden because I don't understand them in the United States, but I don't think we do enough of asking what matters to you. We are often very divided, and one side looks at the other side and says, what's wrong with you? What's the matter with you? And I wonder if we could get a little further with big societal change if we better understood each other and what matters. I think there are some folks who vote very differently than I do, and they have real concerns that shouldn't be dismissed. Now, the way they show those concerns terrifies the hell out of me. It keeps me up at night, Mats.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that their fears are silly. It doesn't mean that their desires or what matters to them is silly. What matters to them is quite important. I just don't like the way that they go about getting it. But I wonder if in your work in government, in activism, if there's space for this question, what matters to you?
Yes, the answer is yes. and actually tomorrow, since we have an election campaign going on tomorrow, me and a colleague in my party, we're going to go around knocking on people's doors. We have prepared them, so we've put out notes in their mailboxes saying that we will be coming around. And I mean, it's up to them if they want to open the door or not, of course. But so one of the things that we try to do is doing just that, to tell them who we are, where we come from, and then we ask them, so what is important for you here in the city where we live? Is there anything that you feel we could do better? When we say we as politicians, and how even sometimes we try to say, so is there anything you would like to contribute with? So, but really asking them what matters to you. It's instead of going there and saying, hi, we're from this party and we think this is important and this is how we want to solve these problems. And what do you think?
Yeah.
rather listening to them, trying to elicit from them thoughts and ideas and concerns for sure. Because just like you say, I mean, we have, I am familiar with American politics, and we do have a similar, unfortunately, we do have similar tendencies also here in most European countries, and I'm not too happy about it, but I also realize that it comes from that people are concerned about things in society, about how things are going, and they feel perhaps that their way of life is threatened and all that, and then you need to listen to that, and maybe try to by listening, by making sure that, and also making sure that people feel understood. And there are techniques for doing that. Also, perhaps telling them that we also share your concerns, but we have perhaps we have different ways of dealing with these problems than the party that you are leaning towards.
Not all, but most political differences can be described that way, which is we care about the same thing. We ultimately want the same thing. We have different ideas about how to get that thing. Yeah. Most divisions among us, I think, can be described that way. Not all. I mean, I live in a country where a lot of people don't believe that the climate is changing. So we don't really want the same thing. We're not really working toward the same thing. And so there are some exceptions, of course, but I think in many cases, if we could understand what matters to you, we might find out, actually, that matters to me too. Yeah. And I can't promise you that my solution to that problem is the solution that you like, but we might actually have many of the same concerns.
So one thing that I've noticed in talking to people in the city I live about political issues, and sometimes they will come up to me and we are wearing shirts with the name of our party, and they will say, well, I'm not going to vote for your party, they say. Okay, I say, so no, that's up to you. I mean, I hope you're going to vote at least. And everybody says we have a high voting rate here in Sweden, which is very good. So we can all agree on that. It's important to go to vote. And often what I do is, so I say, but how come you are engaged in that other party? What is it that attracts you with how they see things? And then we listen and we talk, and then after a while, I mean, the whole atmosphere becomes quite friendly and less aggressive. And I mean, they're not going to change and vote for my party after that conversation, but at least we have shown each other that we are both. We both share a lot of both concerns and aspirations for how our society should be shaped in the future. And maybe we have different paths going there, but I believe that those conversations are worth having, even if you're not changing anyone's mind, at least not in the short term, but maybe in the long run, you can actually change somebody's mind, but just by being friendly and open and showing them that you are available and willing to try to understand us at least. If I immediately would say that, well, I think your party is a really stupid party, then, well, that's definitely not going to be the end of the conversation.
No, I'm laughing because I can't even imagine you saying that. But it was fun to imagine you saying that. Yeah. You have a stupid party. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more that, as we've been talking about impact, the impact that you make may not be that you've changed someone's vote, but there was still an impact. There was still an impact. You still showed a person that you're not a monster. You're not the enemy. That you're a normal person who's friendly and kind and approachable, and we could talk again in the future if ever you'd like to, but you don't have to hate me. You don't have to vote for me, but you don't have to hate me. And I think that's an important impact that does have maybe a greater impact in the long run than just a single vote that you might have turned.
Yeah, because I mean, some how you need to acknowledge that even if we are the completely opposite sides of the political spectrum, we are both human beings. We both live in the same city, in the same country, and we both want to live decent lives for ourselves and for our families and for our friends. And at least that we have in common. So,
yeah, I really do believe basically everyone wants that, right? It's hard to imagine someone who would say, don't speak for me on that issue. It seems like, we kind of just all want decent lives for ourselves and the people we care about. Yeah.
And then, of course, it is difficult when someone expresses, clearly racist views, or like you mentioned, climate change. If somebody says, well, I don't believe in climate change, it's hard to tackle those things. But then again, if somebody says that, I know I'm not going to be able to convince that person. So I might just say, so you don't believe in climate change? How come? It's just, I think it's really good to talk to each other, to talk to other people about how we talk to other people, to have that conversation going. And how do you do it when you talk to others about helping? And we need to learn from each other. And we've done that now for half an hour, you and I. I think I've learned a lot, and I think you've learned a whole lot of things as well. And hopefully the listeners will do it. So these conversations I think they're important.
I think so too. When you said we've been doing this for a half an hour, I really thought you were going to say you and I have been doing this for years, and the time that we know each other.
We have.
We have had these conversations for years because I have known you for many years. And at the same time, think of how much we covered in just a half an hour.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for the listeners to realize, is that taking even just a half an hour to pause and think about how we talk to people. There's so much that can be covered in a brief amount of time. Not everyone has access to trainings like, you and I will give long trainings, a few hours long, or sometimes even a few days long. Not everyone gets to attend something like that. And so even 30 minutes just to check in on, how we approach people, how we ask questions, can go such a long way. So thank you for doing this with me. And I may, if you're interested, ask you to come on again, especially after the election. Maybe there'll be more to add.
Thank you, Kate. It's been a really pleasure to be here with you as always. So thanks a lot.
Take me in your arms. I don't want to miss a day without you. Let's stay young forever. There is nothing we can't do. And nothing can break us apart when we're together. Facing the sky, we know that we can fly on the wings of love. And we can climb on every mountain top. I never knew eternity till I met you. Since that day I live in a